way, and to see that Korea, with its rich film history, is beginning to embrace it, I think is very exciting for the VR industry as well. So I work for Oculus Story Studio, and Oculus Story Studio is a content company funded by Oculus, and we figure out how to tell stories in virtual reality, and we're just trying to figure it out like everyone else is. And my personal mission at the company is to try to understand how can we elevate VR as an art form? How can it be just as rich as film? And so I try to activate the creative community as much as I can. So I first started out in film. I started out at a company called Participant Media, and there I was part of films like An Inconvenient Truth, Food Inc., Waiting for Superman. I saw firsthand how documentaries could really make a difference and change culture and the impact it could have. But I also started getting a little frustrated with the experience of watching a film, which is it's passive. You don't interact with the content. So I left and I started exploring how is technology helping to create experiences that are more interactive, that activate us more, that are more participatory. And I ended up at Sundance. They have a section there called New Frontier. And New Frontier is all about exploring what the future of the moving image is. And this was before VR came, and lots of artists were experimenting with interesting kinds of things, interactive, web-based work, projection mapping, Kinect-based interactive, but everything was slightly isolated. Nothing really took off. And then I went to a place called the Future of Storytelling, which was really looking more into what else is happening and how is the digital landscape changing the way that we tell stories. And at that time, Oculus had their Kickstarter campaign. I don't know how many of you remember that, but that was truly a moment that you saw people get very excited about something from all different walks of the creative community, the industry, the creatives, and you knew something was about to happen. So before I get too far into virtual reality, I wanted to remind us that creating good content is not about the technology, and that we get inspiration from things around the world that have happened that we can bring into and use technology as a tool. So first I wanted to talk a little bit about this idea of immersion, and where in our past have we been inspired by creating immersive experiences, which is what virtual reality is. It's creating a world that we can then live on. So I found this to be really interesting. In 1787, Robert Barker patented something called a panorama, and it was just a huge picture, and it ended up making a lot of money because people use this as a form of virtual travel. And it shows that we as humans have been wanting new experiences and wanting to be transported for centuries. And if you think about stepping into a church and the huge ceilings and the domes, your body sometimes feels as if you're weightless and that there's something bigger than you. Just this architecture of space can change the way we feel in a space, and that's the way to think about creating for virtual reality. And then the planetarium, which brought the galaxies and the stars to us, and we got to live inside of it, made people have a different relationship to the world around them. And then in the psychedelic time during the 60s, the digital experiences and the immersive installations also replicated that and created something, I don't know how this is going to be translated, but the word gestalt, that the whole of the parts is greater than the sum. And it gave people a visceral body feeling of being more connected to the world. And I think virtual reality is a visceral experience, not just the rational experience that we've had with a lot of content that we see passively. So here's an example of projection mapping that was, I think, an inspiration for VR, where it's just taking projections and changing the physical space to be anything you could dream of. And VR takes that, and you don't actually need a room anymore to do that. You can just create it with something on your head. And of course, theme parks like Disneyland have been creating story worlds for decades now, and it's important to take inspiration from physical places like that. And with VR, you're able to replicate the world around you. you can bring us sitting in this conference room right now, we could feel like we're somewhere in the Mediterranean or flying up in the galaxies and the skies, but just exploring worlds is not that exciting. We're going to get bored, and I think everything that everyone here knows is the impact of storytelling. This is a film by Paul Zak, Dr. Paul Zak, who did a study on storytelling and how it actually releases oxytocin. It connects us more. So the goal with virtual reality storytelling is connecting those two. It's creating these immersive worlds that can make us feel awe, and it's guiding someone on an emotional journey so they can further understand the human condition or a story that you want to tell them. But creating a virtual reality storytelling is completely different. So to talk about different types of virtual reality, I think the word virtual reality has been thrown around a bunch. And I thought I'd give a little bit of a guide onto the different kinds of VR. So from less immersive to most immersive. So less immersive is what we're used to. It's a 2D screen. We're watching a movie. We're watching a television set. It's a frame. It's a box. And then came 3D, which was you're still watching a frame, but it gives this illusion of depth. Now we're getting into 360 degrees, which you just watched with your cardboard. And that's basically taking a flat image and turning it into a sphere around you. And then the next one is 3D 360, which is, a lot of people call it stereoscopic. And that's giving this illusion of more depth into the sphere that you're in and can bring you closer to feeling transported. And then ultimately, this is what Story Studio is working on and what a lot of people are referring to as virtual reality, which is called 3D live rendered positional tracking. And with that, you're actually able to physically walk around virtual objects and you can interact with things. And it's happening live in front of you because every frame is changing in front of you and reacting to what you're doing. So this is the Oculus Rift. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but that middle part is the headset, and what's on the left of it is a sensor that actually sees you in space. And you're actually able to now start walking around. And what's coming out soon is the touch controllers, meaning that you can start interacting with objects. You can pick things up in the virtual world. And this brings you closer to immersion, to presence, to actually feeling like you're there. And at Story Studio, this is what we're aiming for as well. And I think this is a, let me check this real quick actually. This is our Story Studio logo, and let me see what's on here. Oh yeah, so this is our first project. It's called Lost. And this was our first guide into how to draw a viewer's attention in VR, because in VR, the viewer is able to look anywhere. And how do you guide them into the experience that you want them? So for us, we use this tool. This is Be the Firefly, and she first tells you that you can look left, look right, teach the audience how to approach this. And then as the audience, you get to understand that you get to look anywhere, and using these subtle guides to slightly take you into that experience. So Lost is the first project that we did at Story Studio. Dear Angelica is the project that we're working on right now, and I'll get a little bit into it a little bit later. Oh, and we're not, and I'm actually seeing a lot of companies start creating beautiful content and exploring it in different ways, and this is just some of them. This is Baobab Studios. Eric Darnell, who made Madagascar and Ants, is actually leading this company, has devoted his life now to making VR. The Fox Innovation Lab, who made The Martian, Jaunt, Penrose, Verse, and The Weaver. And I think the most important thing right now is for everyone who's doing it to start sharing information. And we made this video to show the community of creators that are making VR right now.
As the Rift launches, I think people are going to be amazed at the range of content that there is in 2016.
There's been this community of people that have completely given their lives to starting to work in this space.
This idea of VR movies. It's been something I've been waiting for and searching for my whole life, and I realized this is that next step, this is that next medium.
It moved me way beyond what I can rationalize.
It goes just like right to your human core.
What I had seen felt like a memory of me being somewhere versus a memory of me watching a film.
I knew right at that moment that I was going to try and help cultivate this thing, and I was going to try and help bring it to life.
They're all incredibly diverse, but they're all part of this family of VR movies.
Cloud Server Seizure is probably the project where we have to keep cleaning off the headset because there's tears inside of it.
With the Martian VR project, which is literally a full 30-minute experience, living the part of Mark Watney and playing all the key scenes in the movie.
While the experience, the character looks at you, but in fact she's looking through you. That look, that moment when she looked straight in the camera, just completely blew our minds.
Alumet lives in a town that floats in the sky, inspired by Venice. You actually are given the ability to use VR controllers like the Oculus Touch and interact with that world.
Invasion is animated characters that you can fall in love with in magical worlds with great stories backing it all up.
Evolution of Verse is a sort of surrealist, lucid dream.
The Angelica is literally as if you could step inside of a painting, and that is where the whole story unfolds. It feels like this small family.
So I hope that showed you a wide range of content that people are already making out there. And if you think about film and our tradition with film, I'm seeing there's a huge difference in how you create for VR versus how you create for film. And the biggest one is that I'm finding filmmakers are used to creating something where they completely control the experience. And with VR, it's letting go of that experience. You're actually designing for a human being. This is a book that I recommend starting with. It's called The VR Book. It's about human-centered design for virtual reality. The key is really learning about human perception and how you can guide someone without forcing them into a space. And now I wanted to take you through some of the projects that I'm seeing breaking ground in VR. The first is called Clouds Over Sea.